In the last episode of The Time Compass,
Beauty is, well, beautiful. But what is beauty? What is it that attracts us to look at something that is beautiful? This is a question to which the ancient Greeks devoted a lot of time, study, and hard work. The ancient Greeks believed that since human beings are the only living things able to appreciate beauty, and the only living things able to create it, then beauty could be found within us and created by us. Aside from the ability to create beauty, human beings also had virtue. Virtue is that very special and uniquely human quality of wanting to create perfection in every aspect of our lives. That humans should pursue the qualities of beauty and virtue was a profound idea. But if there's one thing the ancient Greeks did well, it was come up with big ideas. In fact, many of the principles of our modern society, even the way people see and think of the world today, was influenced by this group of people living on the Aegean Sea 2,600 years ago. The Time Compass.
Classical Greece, Part 2. Making things that were beautiful was one of the things the ancient Greeks did best. That's because they loved beautiful things. They wanted to be surrounded by beauty. To do this, they became magnificent artisans and builders and created fantastic works that we still admire today. The ancient Greeks were some of the best artists the world has ever seen. We call ancient Greek art classical art. And the Greek way of expressing beauty has been a source of inspiration to many cultures over the course of history. Cultures like the ancient Romans, and later, Renaissance artists. Do you remember Leonardo da Vinci? Yeah, he painted the Mona Lisa. Even modern painters have looked to the ancient Greeks as a source of inspiration. The famous Greek sculptures do not portray anybody in particular, but are the reflection of the ideal of human beauty. Their statues are so good, so well done, that only a handful of sculptures through the course of history, even today, have been able to match the quality that the ancient Greeks were renowned for. The Olympic Games. The Olympics were a great celebration that gathered together representatives from all the Greek cities. And while the event was taking place, all wars were forbidden. The Olympics were so important, all disputes between the Greek cities were put on hold for the duration of the Games.
Welcome once again to the Olympic Games, the 4-year Greek sports extravaganza brought to you by Zeus, proud deity of this year's Games. Okay, sports fans, we've already seen some true drama during the previous events, but today we bring you the most anticipated event of the Games, the pentathlon. 5 disciplines: running, jumping, discus, javelin, and wrestling.
For the men, there was no better way of impressing a woman than winning this competition, because it meant combining all physical and moral virtues. Of course, you're probably thinking that whoever won this arduous competition received a big cup and lots of money, like athletes do today. Well, you're wrong. What the winners received was an olive wreath.
That's okay, sports fans. Ancient Greeks aren't in it for the money, they're in it for the glory. And nothing says glory better than the olive wreath.
The olive wreath has been brought to you today by the gods of Olympus, proud sponsors of this and every Olympic Games.
The gods on Olympus. The Greeks had gods and goddesses for almost all aspects of life. War,
We're gonna defeat everybody.
love,
I love it when you write those poems.
family,
I'll wait for you for dinner, darling.
and wisdom, amongst others. But there was one god who ruled over all others, and that was Zeus. There were 12 main Greek gods, and they all lived together in a huge palace on top of Mount Olympus, a mountain so tall and so steep, no mortal could climb it. The palace on Olympus had all the luxuries you could imagine, with many rooms: a zoo for sacred animals, a weapons room, kitchens, and dining rooms. And the most important place was a big living room where all the gods gathered to debate human problems. For example, whom should we reward today? Or, even better, whom should we punish? The Greek gods were very similar to humans. They felt hate and envy. They felt pain in wars and combats. And above all, they fell in love with each other, bringing many children into the world, who also became gods or demigods. But there were other qualities that made gods very different from humans. The gods were immortal and possessed great powers. They also held the destiny of each human being on the earth in their hands.
Philosophy.
The Greeks loved to think big thoughts about the world that surrounded them. From math to love to nature, they asked questions about it all. That's how philosophy was born. Philosophy is a way of studying and figuring out the world by asking questions and using reason and logic to find answers. In ancient Greece, there lived many wise men who asked questions that had very difficult answers. For example, what is everything made of?
I think the universe is made up of just 4 things: earth, water, air, and fire.
Through the discussion of these things, the Greeks came up with ideas that science didn't prove until thousands of years later.
I think all matter is made up of really tiny particles, so small you can't divide them. I'm going to call these atoms.
The ancient Greek philosophers debated many things. And although their discussions sparked many arguments between people who thought one way and people who thought another, their contributions hugely impact the way we see the world today. Their focus on trying to answer questions in a logical and proven manner was the basis for the scientific method, and thus the basis for how we approach nearly all science today.
Alexander the Great.
There was a man in Greece who, from a very young age, had the biggest dreams that anyone could imagine. This young man, named Alexander, was the son of King Philip II, King of Macedonia, and he decided to set off on a long journey with an ambitious aim.
I want to become the greatest conqueror ever and rule the world.
Alexander's journey began in Macedonia in the year 334 BC. When he was 20 years old, the young warrior formed an army and trained it in tactics that were new for the time. With this army, he achieved incredible feats.
Let's see, I conquered here and over here and pretty much the whole ancient world, even over here.
Alexander's empire united the Western and Eastern worlds, thus spreading the special Greek culture. When Alexander created his empire and centralized power, he contradicted one of the main principles of the Greek spirit. Cities that had been independent before were now all ruled by one man. But when Alexander died at an early age, leaving no one to rule in his place, classical Greece fell apart and thus ended the age.
Let's dig a little deeper with our time compass and find out what else was going on around the world at that time.
So what do you think was happening way over in the Americas while Alexander the Great was trying to conquer the world? Well, the Maya were building their marvelous temples and cities in Central America, where they developed one of the most powerful and refined civilizations on the entire continent.
And what was happening back in Europe? In Rome, for example?
Well, the Romans were rebuilding their city, because a few years before, a horde of warlike Gauls descended from the Celts had passed through under the command of Brennus. They defeated the army, devastated, destroyed, and burnt down the entire city.
What? Rome was destroyed? Impossible.
That's right, Pipo. Rome was destroyed in the year 387 BC. But one of the things that made the Romans of that time such a powerful culture is they never gave up, even after a devastating defeat. The Romans came back after the Gauls left, they rebuilt the city and kept going forward. But the Romans never forgot their defeat at the hands of the Gauls. It wasn't until 350 years later when a young man named Julius Caesar finally vanquished their feared enemy.